And welcome back, fellow American patriots and Minutemen, standing at the ready to fight anew for the issues that matter today on this fine Tuesday at CR Podcast. The Blaze, your host, Daniel Hurwitz. What is the issue? It is border security, but not the way border security has been thrown around for so many decades. People think of border security as immigration control. We don't need a border patrol for immigration. Okay. We should not have any illegal immigration. And you see that once you make it clear that if you come here, you'll be removed, well, then they don't come, or, very small numbers. Now, obviously, immigration is for the interior, and we need ICE, and we need to do better things with that. But it is time to finally deal with the fact as we see the Jalisco cartel take over parts of Mexico, the violence there. We need to understand they are controlling both sides of the border. Our border is not more secure, unfortunately. We have fewer people flowing over, which is good, but that's only part of it. Now is the time for Trump to take his one issue that he's perceived as being successful on and actually creating an enduring victory by finally militarizing our border, treating it like a military DMZ zone rather than a law enforcement operation for cops, which is what Border Patrol is. So I want to get into what our border should look like, what's happening in Mexico, sending special ops there, working with anti-cartel operations, what we should and shouldn't be doing in there. We do need to focus more on our hemisphere, but we don't want to focus on it in the same GWAT, global war on terror, dumpster fire that we employed overseas for many years. So we're going to have coming up soon a former Border Patrol agent and Army officer all in one to brief us on what's going on in Mexico at our border and what ought to be done with that. Just want to touch on a few things moving back to the interior. Again, the interior is all about immigration. The interior is about enforcing the law. It's that simple. You just make illegal immigration illegal. That's what it is. We should not have anyone coming over the border, but that still does not make a secure border from the strategic threats from the cartel control. So, what about the interior? Again, just going to spend a couple minutes because I could spend all day on all the stories. There's a few stories, two stories I want to bring to your attention. A couple of hundred Ohio high school students walked out in an anti-ICE demonstration and they damaged a Kroger's. And I bring this up because how is it that we have public schools run by red state governors, governments, where they're fomenting anti-ICE activity and they're able to do this? This needs to be swiftly put down by the governors. You see with blue state governors, they don't tolerate areas that they don't control. These are public schools. You do not have a free speech right to do your anti-ICE stuff and not get punished. I mean, this is a clear thing. There are some gray areas, but you don't have free speech rights. You have free speech rights not to get imprisoned for it, but you can get kicked out of school. And moreover, it's not just about the students. We all know that this is being fomented by certain teachers and administrators, and that's where they need to clamp down. Yet again, Florida is the only state where I'm even seeing the administration trying to give lip service to clamping down on the anti-ICE insurgency in government schools. So, but then again, Ohio is Mike DeWine, Trump endorsed piece of garbage. So that's what you get. And this is what we're going to continue to get if we sleep through the primaries. Then I want to move over to California, juxtapose a red state to a blue state. Again, red states don't fight illegal immigration and support ICE as much as blue states fight immigration enforcement and fight ICE. So California Governor Gavin Newsom announced the allocation of $35 million in state funding to support illegal aliens and NGOs that basically harbor them. Now, this is two things here. Number one, this is straight up a violation of 8 USC 1324, shielding, harboring, concealing from detection. Where are the DOJ indictments? Then again, frankly, I haven't heard of any DOJ indictments of the Somali fraud since the Nick Shirley story. So they're not really indicting anyone. It's kind of a joke. They're busy, the FBI director is chugging beer at the Olympics. But the other point I wanted to make is I remember when, harken back to when Biden was president and they were locking up people for doing nothing on January 6th, clearly peacefully protesting, people that did not do anything violent, didn't do anything to break a law. And you had raids from the FBI in the middle of the night, pretrial detention. And we were talking about how red states need to interpose. And people think, well, they can't do anything. The feds control anything. Well, now the Democrats are showing you in blue states exactly what interposition looks like. They're violating federal law by shielding and harboring and giving support to illegal aliens to remain in the country undetected, and nothing happens to them. So they stand up for their constituencies. My point is, not if, but when you have the next Democrat president turn this apparatus of law enforcement on law-abiding Americans' political opponents, are we going to have red state governments who stand up for their rights as strongly as the blue state governments stand up for illegal aliens? And unfortunately, with the current arc and trajectory of the primaries, I'd say no. But anyway, that is a model of how we need to act when, the FBI and the DOJ is weaponized against us. So those are the two stories, just to juxtapose blue and red states in the context of this sort of interior enforcement. Moving on to the judges. And again, I'm talking about this because right now, believe it or not, there's two things intersecting. On the one hand, we have technically a shutdown of DHS. They've now stopped TSA PreCheck, which will be disruptive to a lot of people. And then you have the State of the Union address tonight, where the president has a bully pulpit to demand a DHS funding bill that redresses sanctuary cities, addresses the ability of states to cooperate and enforce immigration law, and addresses the judges. So I've been talking about how one of the many reasons why you can't comply your way out of judicial tyranny is because even when you win at a higher level court, lower court judges just come back in a different case and do what they want. We talked about this with the Fifth Circuit ruling that, of course, the president could detain without a bond hearing if he's intending to deport these people back to their home countries, and two district judges within that circuit just defy it. And somehow that's okay. And somehow we're told that Trump needs to listen to the judges defying the law, the Constitution, and superior court rulings. So a couple days ago in the Ninth Circuit, you had another one of these cases, an en banc hearing to continue a 10-month stay on a deportation. So basically, what I'm giving over here is a sort of a paraphrase of Judge Van Dyke's dissent. He's a good judge. He's a Trump appointee. And he noticed, he ripped into these guys, and he noticed that one of the ways that they're thwarting Supreme Court precedent, you know how I keep telling you that you have endless Supreme Court precedent, that there are no fundamental rights to remain in the country, to get due process, as long as we're not indefinitely detaining you, if it's a detention to effect a removal. But yet you have every day, they're just staying all these removals, staying all these detentions, releasing them. And one of his observations, because this was the case, is that they're using the shadow docket so they won't rule on the merits against the Supreme Court. But you know what they'll do? They'll indefinitely stay the deportation. Just say, well, we don't know what's happening now, but you can't deport pending the merits. And then, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because their docket is overwhelmed. So then the deportations basically get ground to a halt, and they will until a Democrat president comes back in and they restart the clock. That's what they're doing. So they're defying the Supreme Court, but they're saying, okay, we won't reach the merits. We'll just put a long-term injunction on the Administration Act. So this is my point is This is why, I hear a lot of these apologists for the administration and the Teletubbies on the right. They're saying, yeah, we're going to go and we're going to appeal this. The Supreme Court's going to overturn it. But you see that despite so-called overturning a lot of these opinions, we're in the second year of this administration, and all of this stuff is being ground to a halt. Just last week, an immigration judge blocked the Trump administration from deporting Moshe Mandawi, a Palestinian graduate student leading the pro-Hamas stuff at Columbia University. And again, it's straight up in statute that if you espouse, yes, that is speech. Even for espousing support for terrorism, you're deportable. Why? Because we're not locking you up in prison. We're terminating your privilege to come here on a visa. Go back home and you won't be in prison and do your jihad stuff all you want. So anyway, I just don't see an effort to use the bully pulpit of the State of the Union during a DHS funding lapse to demand from Republicans talking filibuster to change this. Then again, unfortunately, that's not the president's full priority. And again, it is what it is. So before we move on, I just want to turn over to our sponsor for the month, Policy Genius. As spring is somewhat around the corner, although it doesn't feel like it, a lot of people are prepping their garden. They want to get out and, rejuvenate themselves for the year. It's a time to remember that we are fleeting beings on this world. And it's particularly sad watching this cancer epidemic and just so many people dying young. And it really is something you don't like to think about, but you really do. If you have a family and you're the primary earner, you really need to think about life insurance. Most people do not get enough from their employer, and you have to buy a personal plan. It is really the only form of insurance that has not skyrocketed yet. I don't know why, but hey, let's take advantage of it. Policy Genius is not an insurance company. Okay, that's important to remember. It is not an insurance company. They aggregate online apples to apples comparisons for what you need, the terms, the length you want. You could protect your life you've built with Policy Genius. You could pretty much find 20-year life insurance policies starting at just $276 a year for $1 million in full coverage. And yes, you do need $1 million in coverage. I know that sounds like a lot. It's not. If you are the primary source of income and you have young kids, believe me, in this economy, you need that. So head over to Policy Genius to compare life insurance quotes from top companies to see how much you could save. Prioritize your peace of mind. They even have people that you could call on the phone, so it's not some shady website. They have thousands of 5-star reviews. Again, secure your future with peace of mind today and that of your family by going to policygenius.com. So folks, because I do this on the fly every day, it's not scripted or orchestrated or pre-recorded a day before. So I was going to have my border agent guy, but he's actually out with Border Patrol on the northern border today. So he is not able to join me because he does not have service. So we'll have to do that at a different point. I really want to get his expertise because he's both a military veteran and a border agent, former border agent. Now he's a policy analyst at Texas Public Policy Institute. So the point is that, just real briefly, and we'll get into it in greater detail, and then we'll move on to the State of the Union. But the main thing is, number one, before we talk about Mexico, the main thing we need to do is militarize our border. Done. Okay? Full stop. Border Patrol should not be cops. International borders are defended. They're not policed. In other words, our border should not look like a city stop and frisk, a metro city stop and frisk. It should look like the Korean DMZ. Okay, I never understood. If you have drones flying over the Korean DMZ, it's going to get zapped, much less people. and cartel members. Yet we have that all the time. Our border is not secure. See, we have made the mistake of defining for too long a secure border by how much immigration, how many illegals flow over. Now that ties into security because the cartels use that for their model. So it's great that we got it down, but that you solve by simply enforcing your sovereignty, enforcing your laws. We still have the cartels controlling both sides of the border on the ground, through drones. We need a secure the line, hold the line approach, a DMZ. You don't come across there. And in fact, I will be so bold to say, I don't believe in Border Patrol. Okay, I'm going to tell you that. I do not believe in Border Patrol. I believe in ICE because you need to deal with those already here. But we shouldn't have illegals because if you actually enforce the laws and you can't get a job, as we see, they won't come. What you need is the military. A military is not for other countries, it's for our own border. Now, if you want to have a unit, a Border Patrol unit of the military, then that's what you should have. But a unit of the military nonetheless. The mindset of creating CBP was basically creating a federal police force to police the border. So that's number one, because you're going to hear a lot about with what's going on in Jalisco with, the CJNG cartel that, oh my gosh, we need to focus on, sending our Delta ops to Mexico. And clearly we're involved there, as we seem to be involved throughout Latin America. And as I've mentioned before, we cannot make the mistake of contorting the criticism of the past of, namely, that we focused too much on the Middle East rather than our own hemisphere, which is legitimate, by then turning around and focusing on our own hemisphere in the same failed way that we focused on the Middle East. It's not just that we need to focus more on the, our hemisphere, but we shouldn't GWAT. In other words, we should avoid the GWATization of our hemisphere, global war on terror, where it's train and equip. Let's work with one good actor to try to build the civil institutions and the police and the military to fight the bad guy. Look, in a perfect world, yeah, not only would we secure our own border, but we would deal with the source of the problem. You show me how to do that. we can't fix our own society. The notion that there's value add, the ROI in investing time, money, and lives in this whack-a-mole game. You knock off a couple of leaders. Oh, this terrorist leader. It's like, well, terrorism is endemic of Islamic countries because Islam. So narco terrorism is endemic of Mexico. It is what it is. So I like knocking off bad guys like the next person, but what is the ultimate strategy, right? What are we trying to do there? We're not very good at hold and build. We're good at secure and defend. That's what a military can do. We need a buffer zone. Right now, the buffer zone is north of our border. The buffer zone needs to be south of our border because not 1 inch of American territory should ever be unsecure. And right now, you would not want to go, even now under Trump, while we have a much slower flow of illegals. But in terms of cartel control, operational control of our border, that is still a problem. And, while because of the flow stopping or slowing, that is regarded as relatively Trump's probably his biggest success, and I agree it is, he should prime the pump by building upon it to retool Border Patrol as part of the military. And these are the things that need to be done if you have a must-pass bill. Again, now is his opportunity at the State of the Union address to make the case with a DHS shutdown. I'm demanding that we once and for all use our military for the purpose that a military is used in every other country. It is to make sure that every inch of your border is in control. A border patrol is not about immigration. Okay? Obviously, if they come, you want them to stop them, but that's not the point. Because as we've seen, it's all about incentives. I promise you, you and I both know, Trump talks about inviting these guys, we need these guys for clean the toilets and the farm workers. Oh, okay, well, that's a different argument, and you could debate that. But we all know if you would actually dry up the job magnet, they wouldn't come. So that takes away one modality of infiltration of the cartels, but then you have the drugs and you have other stuff. Now, you're never going to stop it all, but we can't be playing whack-a-mole. If you have one particularly prolific drug supply and you want to blow it up, I'm all for that. Okay? Strike and maneuver. That's what we do good at. But it has to have some sort of end to it or some sort of defined purpose. That's my concern with what we're doing in Mexico and Latin America now. It strikes me as a lot of, GWAT sort of stuff. One of the things, and again, because Amon, my border agent expert and friend, he's not here. I'm just going to read to you one of the things he sent to me because he's not here today. We lost strategic leverage in Afghanistan by tolerating systemic corruption, sending mixed signals, divorcing operations from a coherent political end, and allowing aid and legitimacy to flow through an unreformed partner that was penetrated by the adversary. That's what we did there. Cigar was the inspector general in Afghanistan, recorded 3 warnings unmistakably. 1, corruption is a strategic cancer. Inconsistent U.S. signaling and partner exclusion hollow legitimacy. And 3, once aid and access are captured, our money sustains the adversary. So we have to make sure that we're not continuing to do all these things. And that is my biggest concern at this juncture. I'm all for killing El Mencho in a vacuum, but what are we trying to do with that? That's not going to stop the Jalisco cartel. That's not going to make them go away. It's going to foment more violence, which is fine. But we need to make the focus should not be on working with Scheinbaum to target people in Mexico, except for maybe in certain limited circumstances where you can articulate a sustainable strategy. But it should generally be focused on creating a DMZ at our own border. And that's really where Trump has the most latitude, because that's foreign policy. And as much as the courts will probably get involved in that too, but I mean, it's kind of hard. So, Trump likes foreign policy, but that's the best way to deal with that. And with that, I want to turn things over to, again, I'm just changing courses here today because we lost our guest, to a pre-State of the Union analysis. So let me start out with showing you what is wrong with the state of the Trump administration. Take a listen to a statement the president said recently.
Our people, they've been incredible, the job they've done. And they take nothing but abuse, but, they're sort of pretty hardened to that, I think, because they know they're doing the right thing. It just amazes me that there's not more support out there. It's just, we actually have a silent support. I think it's silent. Well, that's how I won. I got probably 85 million votes. They say 78 million, 79 million. They cheated in this election too. It was just too big to rig.
So folks, it's like, I don't understand why people don't support me more. Why is everyone upset? They're mean. Oh, but the election was stolen. Dude, I mean, you spent the entire year, your first year in office, squandering your bully pulpit. He never gave primetime speeches. By the way, you don't have to wait to the State of the Union. He controls Mike Johnson. He could have Mike invite him anytime he wants, 3 times a year. before any major piece of legislation, and he demands legislation. And then executively, he's backed down on everything. He pulled out of the border missions. You don't see the military there. He pulled out of the National Guard going to secure these cities and protect federal agents, and he pulled out the federal immigration agents from a lot of these things. Like, what do you want from me? I mean, you're failing because people are not seeing enduring victories, and the economy is terrible, and you're praising the economy. It's really that simple. So how do you rectify this? Well, I don't know. It's kind of hard to rectify it when you spend your first year like that. The tariffs and these stupid things. What would I do if I were Trump? Well, there's two parts of this. So, on the one hand, it's a little bit awkward to say everything sucks, even though it does, because you've been there now for over a year and you have to tout accomplishments. But you're not going to win by lying to people about the economy. So there needs to be two parts of the speech, the non economy and the economy. And basically, the non economy part of it should be talking about making America stronger, obviously starting with the border, that you don't have to lie to the people. Again, it's a little bit incomplete, I would argue, with the cartel control, but at least, look, the numbers are down. You can't deny that. And I think that's something he should shove in their face and say, we're never going back to that. And here's what I'm going to do. Push the DHS funding bill, remind people about the border, remind people how this started, remind people the need to end it, demand, this bill to get around the talking filibuster and to end this once and for all. And I think that's something he could tout. Now, I no longer believe that there's a dichotomy between foreign and domestic policy because, unfortunately, I do believe that there's a lot of problems with his foreign policy now. But it's a little bit nuanced for the public, and I think he could tout, oh, I grabbed Maduro and I did all these things. On some level, I think that would work. But then you're going to have to get to the economy, and that's going to have to be the part that's glass half empty. Now, you can't say I made mistakes. You'll look like a fool, even though he has. That's where you say, I need more cooperation. I plan to do this, this, and this, and I need more cooperation. Now, I suspect that the president will unveil some old and maybe a couple of new economic policies, but my feeling from what I'm seeing is that they're all going to be these Keynesian things that rather than recognizing the debt as the source of inflation, he's going to propose more spending ideas that are designed to put the government more in debt, expand the deficit, expand inflation, and funnel that money through his corporate allies as a pay for play. That is the embodiment of this. I hate to say it, but this is what we're seeing. Don't shoot the messenger. There's not much we can do with that. Okay, there's not much we can do with that because you're never going to out socialist the Democrats. You're never going to outbid them. You have to get to the source of the problem. Honestly, the best strategic approach for Trump is to be honest. Okay, being honest is the easiest one, and say, look, foreign policy, I've been able to do this and the border because I have a degree of latitude. But when it comes to the economy, the debt has been, driving this for so long, and I need cooperation on getting it down. But unfortunately, I don't see him doing that. And let me give you an example. There's rumors that he's going to announce some sort of plan to have another alternative to people that don't have 401ks, because he's very into that, to give them 401ks. But again, inevitably, that's another tax exclusion that's going, no matter what you want to call it, it will increase the federal deficit, which increases inflation. And it's all designed to put more money where? In the stock market. And putting money in the stock market means what? Juicing up the valuations of the AI big tech companies. That's it. It's a one-trick pony. It's all this Keynesian venture socialist stock market valuation juicing. That's all he thinks of. If you look at all of Trump's policies very, very carefully, what you're very quickly going to find is that they're all designed to try to make the unaffordable, unsustainable pricing of our economy somewhat affordable and sustainable and subsidized, rather than taking away the problems and making the prices more sustainable. It's that simple. It's like, we have a great article up at the Blaze, for example, about cars and all of the different ways that cars have been made more expensive. Why the minimum car now is $50,000 for the average new car. It's unaffordable. So what was Trump's plan with that stupid BBB? To basically go ahead and tell people, we're going to subsidize more loans, more debt, more unaffordable. No. So we have an article up, a list of 10 things that mandates and regulations that they're mandated with all these bells and whistles of driver assist and the computerization, and now with the chips, ironically coming full circle thanks to his AI policy. Thanks to his AI policy, cars are going to be a fortune because of the chip shortage. You have to allow options. Hear me out. Hear me out. I know this is going to sound very controversial, but remember your car in the first decade of the 2000s. So it had power windows, power locks. Okay. Maybe a couple other things. Was it that bad? Okay. That's what we need to have, at least have options for people to purchase that car. We want the freedom of mobility. See, this is the whole thing with the 15-minute cities. We got to have cheap, abundant, affordable cars. That is the bedrock of America. And that needs to be a big campaign promise. Not like, oh, I'll find more Keynesian Democrat subsidies for you to afford the unaffordable levels, thereby creating more inflation and a vicious cycle. So that's what I'm concerned with, some of the things I'm hearing about. Now, obviously, the other thing the president needs to use the bully pulpit for is judicial supremacism. As we mentioned earlier, you can't get around that. You cannot get around judicial supremacism. And he needs to explain to people, he says, look, I have controversial views, but my opponents have controversial views. And why should it be that if you're unelected and life tenured, you have more latitude to implement your controversial ideas than those that go through a deliberative process? That's the point the president needs to bring up. An awesome message on judicial supremacism, unknowingly, is Justice Gorsuch. So in his concurrence on the tariff decision, saying the president doesn't have the authority to do what he did without Congress, he had a great explanation of why the most consequential policy decisions need to be made by the deliberative body that represents Americans. So I'm going to read that to you. And frankly, Trump should borrow that to rail against judicial supremacism. So again, this is from his closing paragraph. For those who think it is important for the nation to impose more tariffs, I understand that today's decision will be disappointing. All I can offer them is that most major decisions affecting the rights and responsibilities of American people, including to pay taxes and tariffs, are funneled through the legislative process for a reason. Yes, legislating can be hard and take time. And yes, it can be tempting to bypass Congress when some pressing problems arise. But the deliberative nature of the legislative process was the whole point of its design. Through that process, the nation can tap the combined wisdom of the people's elected representatives, not just that of one faction or man. Their deliberations tempers impulse, and compromise hammers disagreements into working solutions. And because laws must earn such broad support to survive the legislative process, they tend to endure allowing ordinary people to plan their lives in ways that they cannot when the rules shift from day to day. In all, the legislative process helps ensure each of us has a stake in the laws that govern us and the nation's future. And I'm reading this and I'm jumping out of my seat. I'm like, dude, do you not understand that your rebuke of a president not implementing these policies unilaterally without Congress applies 100-fold to the judiciary deciding every major cultural, social, political issue you could imagine when, unlike the president, they're not initially elected and they're life tenured and don't stand for election. And it's also unilateral. There's no deliberative process. You could just decide anything you want and no one could check it. No one has to check your work. If you're a district judge, you do it unilaterally. Okay, appellate judge usually is with 3, Supreme Court's with 9. That's not a lot. It amazes me how everyone could sit down and have a discussion of why the president can't act without Congress, and I agree with it, assuming it's not validly delegated to him by the Constitution or statute. But somehow when it comes to the courts, it's like there's nothing they can't do. There's no deliberative process, no committee process, no public input. Okay, we decide one day a marriage between a horse and a donkey is a marriage and states have to accept it. New definition. We redefined 5,000 years of civilization. Here's what it is. This is a citizen. This is a woman. This is a marriage. It's shocking to me how much power we accord. That is the message the president needs to deliver about the courts. And again, I just want to go back to the economy. I just want to reiterate, you're not going to win the public over by lying. It's better to be honest with them. Say, it took a while to get into this. Here's my plan to get out of it, to ease off of the debt and inflation. Of course, sadly, he's not going to do it. But instead, let me play to you an ad that's playing on Fox News, inculcating the brains of mainly seniors who vote Republican to this digital fentanyl.
It's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time. Check out this red beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at gettrumpwatches.com. These make a great gift. It's Trump time.
Yeah, so these watches are like $500 or something. And I mean, nothing says I'm for the common man. Everything is about selling a brand. And this is the central problem, that he needs to use the bully pulpit to finally exude a degree of authenticity. That I actually believe in this. I actually care to see this through. I'm going to see this through, rather than this is just a brand. This is just a grift. This is just a way of funneling stuff to my donors and Qatar Akbar and crypto this. And you know, it's hilarious, by the way. I saw a story that I remember I was asking you, how the hell are they going to get $5 billion for this Gaza Board of Peace? So it turns out they're going to try to raise the money from a Gaza meme coin or a tokenization. So you mix crypto grift with Qatar Akbar. Man, that's really in the American interest. But I got to say, that unfortunately embodies what the last 13 months has been about, even more so than his first term. You're not going to win on that. You're not going to win on aristo-populism. So these are some of the themes that I would like to see him bring up. Now, then, of course, by the way, just with foreign policy, the 2 American pilots caught in Guinea are still in prison and they're not home. Again, we're taking out El Mencho. We're taking out Maduro. How is it that a 2-bit country like Guinea has been holding our pilots since December 29th? That's almost 2 months. So now the administration is talking about it, but how are you talking about it? Why are you talking about it? In the amount of time it takes to talk about it, you should have gotten them out. I don't understand that for a minute. But that story certainly bothers me. But then we have the other thing, which I would just love for the president to. Can you imagine if the president gave a State of the Union address? I know you're going to laugh at me, but a man's got a dream. He gave it on land, liberty, the surveillance state, gold, God, family, maintaining the integrity of American communities, the safety, security, quality of life, and even aesthetics. Trump likes talking about aesthetics all the time of communities. But unfortunately, he's on the other side of it. I'm telling you, land ownership, farming, the surveillance state, transhumanism, and big tech slop bot, those issues, I'm telling you, could form the core of a new movement and a new party overnight, and you will get a wide swath of America. All the MAGA rural voters would agree with it, but you'd get tons of people in the middle and even some on the left, a good number on the left. If you want to start a new political party that confronts a lot of the key elements of our time, you wouldn't maintain the coalition for everything, obviously. And you want it to catch off like wildfire. I'm just telling you, if you want to start a successful new party, which is so hard in our system, and I recognize that, you do it on maintaining land ownership and the integrity of our communities from the assault, the multi-frontal assault on landowners' rights, eminent domain, the AI chatbot agenda, the data centers. Imagine if Trump were to get up there. He could single-handedly turn around his polling numbers. But of course, we're going to hear the opposite, which is very sad. By the way, did you know that? So we now have the number of where is this? I'm just looking here. The number of data centers is up to about 4,000 data centers in America, and they're just getting started. They have nearly 3,000 more planned under construction. And if you believe their narrative of what they're perpetually going to need, which is, a farce, it would be a lot more than that. Like, do you understand what that looks like? Do you know what the country with the second largest amount of data centers is? You're probably thinking China. No, it's actually Great Britain. And the next one's Germany. China is something like number 5. They have about 365. So they have, 1/9 of the amount of data centers we have. They're clearly not competing in this arms race we're gaslit to believe that we're all undergoing now. No, that's not what they're working on, because again, they already have a surveillance state, so they don't need it because that's all it's good for. It's pathetic. So anyway, there's a lot of this going on throughout. I mean, I was going to have on also, I didn't have time. There's this family from Cheyenne, Wyoming that's going to lose their farm. The city wants to use eminent domain to expand the city for affordable housing. This is happening everywhere. It's not just data centers. It's a multi-frontal assault on rugged independent homesteaders, ranchers, and farmers to use for urbanization. And unfortunately, the Trump administration is all into it. But anyway, in Indiana, hundreds of families and farm owners are under threat of eminent domain for the Mid-States Corridor Project. It's a $3 billion taxpayer-funded project to seize over 3,000 acres of homes and heritage farms. It could be businesses, churches, wetlands, forests, in order to build a road that few people in the area want. And I don't see a real need for it. And, there's nobody standing for them. The Indiana Republican Party is actually, like I said, and this is true of many Republican parties, state Republican parties in red states, they are less in favor of landowners than Democrats are. And I'm telling you, ultimately, this is going to be the issue that cracks red states open for Democrats. It could be the issue that could crack open a third party that's better than both of them and defeats the uniparty. But, we can't have nice things. But I want you to close your eyes and think for a minute. Imagine if the president would rail against the land grabs, the disgusting nature of what these data centers are doing, the chat slop, and the surveillance state, and the transhumanism. Even Axios, which is bought out by AI, like every second, these like, Claude and whatever ads. So they have an article out today talking about how this issue is just bubbling over and it's nonpartisan, bipartisan, but Democrats have been better at cultivating it so far because they're less bought out by big tech at the moment. And they recognize this is the issue. I cannot believe that we are willing to die on the sword of transhumanist technocracy. Like, at least if you're going to lose, get rid of all the welfare and entitlement state and solve the debt and inflation problem for the amount we could do, or get rid of every illegal. But no. Nope. By the way, speaking of Indiana, relatedly, there's two other items there just to demonstrate that this has nothing to do with, oh, but the media, but the Democrats, we need more votes. Indiana HB 1200, they had an amendment. State Senator Mike Young had an amendment that would ban asylees, refugees, and those who can't speak English from getting a CDL. Now, you have to understand, we have had at least 3 recent tragic truck accidents where illegals were driving trucks, swerved into oncoming traffic, and killed Americans in the prime of their life out of nowhere in the state of Indiana. So now you would think you have 3-1 majorities in a red state, and you have 3 of these tragedies happen so close together, you're going to have a tough bill. So there is pressure to have a CDL reform bill, but it's a CDL reform bill. It's not a repeal bill. So they had an amendment to make it simply that asylees, refugees, because the problem is, you have to understand, the sleight of hand here is that nobody is illegal. What do I mean by that? If you use a certain definition, well, the Biden administration granted status to everyone. So they're technically some form of asylee with a notice to appear. So you have to make sure they can't get it. And also anyone who can't speak English, which is what Florida did. Okay, folks, 5 Republicans voted for it. There's also a bill, and I'm just going to check up the Indiana Senate here as I'm talking to you, just to see how many Republicans are there. But as I'm doing that, where is this? Indiana Senate. But anyway, there's another bill that shortened Indiana's early voting period. Indiana has 28 freaking days of early voting. So this was a consensus item. It doesn't abolish it. It truncates it to 16. Crazy. Low-hanging fruit. The GOP speaker opposed it, and it died. It died. Speaker Houston said, I'm very, very comfortable with our election laws as they are. I think giving people a longer opportunity to vote strikes me as a good thing. Why not vote for 2 years? Vote every day. Just vote. Unbelievable. So anyway, the Indiana Senate, where is this? By the way, speaking of which, as I'm looking this up, talk about the shitification of the internet. Google searches are just totally messed up now with this. I can't even pull it up because of stupid AI stuff. But Republicans have a 40-10 majority. 40-10. Okay, I want you to understand that. 40-10. 4-1 ratio. Like, not like a majority, not even a super majority. A crushing 4-1 ratio majority. And yet, we got 1/8 of the Republicans to stand by the proposition that illegals and those who can't speak English should not get a truck driver's license. I can't relate to this, but this is what happens when you have a listless movement for 11 years, anointing one man as king, that is not about ideology, is about everything but ideology. Well, you know what you get? You get a GOP that exudes and pursues everything but ideology. And therein lies the problem. So I know we've been a little bit all over the place today. I had to sort of scramble to go through my notes here because we lost our guest, but I do want to delve more into the border story as well. Please subscribe to our podcast here, as well as our Substack, Liberating Truths. I do want to say also you could subscribe to the Blaze TV as well. We're going to have more faith-based programming throughout this year. We're going to have a lot of exciting things. We have our State of the Union coverage tonight. We'll see what happens. I mean, I don't really expect much to change, but I always want to lay down the marker. Those of you who know me, I'm not only about negative or criticism. I'm more about what I think things ought to be, which is why I criticize the status quo, because I'm pained by the fact that it doesn't have to be this way. It really did. You want to look for a winning message on the border, on immigration, on employment, the American worker, the American consumer, the American landowner, pro-humanism. The message is right there for the taking. Till tomorrow, God bless you all. Micah 6'8", and thank you for listening.